That was yet another humiliating defeat for Liverpool. Away again this season, 3-0 to Wolves, and we need to unpack what the real issue is at Liverpool right now. There are a lot of problems, and as always, the devil is in the detail. Broad brushstrokes aren't probably going to help analysing or even improving Liverpool right now. So, welcome back to Laurence McKenna channel. It's good to have you guys. Or is it good? Is this a good day? Is this a good video? Let me know in the comments below. What do you think is Liverpool's big problem? I have a lot of notes. Some notes. Just saying, this Liverpool side shouldn't be losing games by that margin. Losing is one thing, but losing by that margin, losing in such humiliating fashion, losing in a way which has no semblance of the previous Liverpool identity. I'm not about forgiveness or unforgiveness or any of it. It doesn't feel explicable. There is no way you can explain how quickly, without knowing the details, Liverpool have nosedived away from being in the top four, probably even in the top two in the Premier League. And there is a real issue with the hierarchy and the leadership for Liverpool right now. Melissa Reddy, in her article earlier this week, laid out where there was some disparate nature, shall we say, to the very top of that Liverpool tree. A lot of people in the transfer department not being happy with what happened there. Klopp not particularly happy with the lack of control in certain areas. Other people underneath Klopp, in particular some of the training staff, not particularly happy or not particularly good relationships with the other people around him. And you can see that all of these, I'm not going to say what is true and what isn't, what is being reported is true and what isn't, because I don't necessarily know. But like most people, I don't necessarily know. But I do think that even these reports in the first place, even people speaking to the press, people having agendas around the club which don't necessarily streamline into one successful narrative and agenda, is poor for the club. It is similar to what happened at Manchester United, though not exactly the same, as it was players leaking things from the dressing room at that point. And as much as I think there are some players who aren't happy right now, I also think there are a lot of people who understand where their timeline goes from here. And I'll get into those in a second. This performance was woeful. The first half was awful. And in the early stages, the first 15 minutes of the second half, Liverpool looked better. It looked like there was some shape, there was some width. They were popping the ball around. But it wasn't 0-0, it was 2-0 by that point. So Wolves, of course, could sit back, afford to let Liverpool come forward a little bit and break on them. And funnily enough, that was exactly what happened. Even when Liverpool this season looked like they're in control, they look vulnerable. So they're not actually in control. They are lured into multiple different scenarios which do not serve them well. And it's lovely to be able to pop the ball around. It's lovely to make great shapes. But very often it doesn't come to an end product. Nunez getting a shot from a tight angle is not a good end product. We know there aren't many goals from that angle. I laid it out in one of my problems videos earlier this week. We know how hard it is to score from that angle. How much pressure you're putting on one young player to do something particularly special in a game where you need something special because the rest of their game plan hasn't been laid out well. The team look capable. There is capability within the side, and I'll talk about some of the leaders who exist within a poor system which clearly the players either don't know or aren't into playing. It could be both. It could be they don't particularly like the system because they don't know it particularly well and they don't therefore have faith in it. Pep Lingers is the one taking the training sessions, but ultimately responsibility stops with Jurgen Klopp, the trainer of the team, the manager of the team, the guy who works out how this team is going to win. We can get into other stuff in a second. The leaders within the side you can clearly see. Andy Robertson, Thiago, Trent, Alisson. The list kind of stops there. In a similar fashion to the short list that I could make of players that I would keep this season after this season's poor results, poor performances, poor declines. There are multiple different angles you want to attack it from. And by the way, I leave someone like Virgil van Dijk and Hendo out because they're not really playing minutes right now. And when they do come on, their leadership seems muted or their leadership seems ineffective because the other players around them don't necessarily have an idea of what the team is looking to do. I think there is a difference between leading a team tactically to success and being a leader who is just trying to keep the team's head up, who is trying to keep things moving forward, who's trying to, not paper over cracks, but trying to do something that's positive. There is a big difference between the two things. Jordan Henderson was very, very good at bringing Liverpool up those levels. But you need a conducive system which, on any level, is going to say, hey, Liverpool can score some goals here. But if you're leading a side and you don't know where you're leading them to, it becomes a real issue. Along with that, I also think there's some bright sparks for the youth as well. Nunez, clearly a very bright spark, puts himself into great positions, and you can see his confidence is building. Similar for Cody Gakpo as well. In recent weeks, first when he started, he was getting into odd positions for Liverpool. Clearly, he didn't know where he was meant to be. Not that many people in this side currently do. But then, as he dropped a little bit deeper, began to hook up with people, his outballs and the way that he was linking with other players seems really positive. In a more stronger Liverpool dominant side, you can see where that's going. And then thirdly, Bajcetic. Bajcetic is a touch of class in this Liverpool team right now. Tries to control the midfield, puts in great tackles, really good at turning his way out of trouble, really good at getting the ball with his back towards the opposition, turning and getting Liverpool thinking forward again. And he's a 360 footballer. He is capable of knowing where danger is coming on from all angles. And I think some people in this Liverpool side, they're better wide because it's not necessarily then about having to look over your shoulder all the time. It's about delivering a ball in. I also think Trent's leadership is coming through at this time. They've brought in a player who, in Nunez or whoever else you want to put in there, who brings chaos, who brings energy. And then they've gone to, weirdly, a structure that doesn't seem to suit him or doesn't seem to aid him right now. Tactically, Liverpool need coaching. They need people in there who are going to help them out. They don't need people who are just going to, okay, well, the system is the system. Like, there has to be some investment within the system, and there is clearly no investment within the system from the players. That's where we can kind of get on to the next issues with Liverpool, right? Earlier on in the season, it was Trent Alexander-Arnold who was getting hung out to dry in the press, in the media, on Twitter, on blogs, all these different places. Trent was the guy who was getting the flack for what most people say was poor performances. You can clearly see that Trent wasn't happy with his position, wasn't happy with the direction of the side, the velocity, as I spoke about in my previous Everton video. And I think there is a disconnect between what Liverpool players think is going to be playable and what the staff are currently trying to get Liverpool to play. It's very clear. I was at the Brighton game. I watched the Liverpool players from very high on the field. There were times where you could see the shape wasn't being adhered to. There's times where you could see that it was. And you could sometimes see that the coaching, they were trying to work out what the coaches wanted them to do. But there were also moments where you could see the frustration visibly on the players' faces in their body language and in the way they were kicking the ball around. This isn't me trying to start rumors about the club, trying to say that people aren't happy with Jurgen Klopp and they want him out. I don't think this is a good time to be calling for Jurgen Klopp's head. I don't think this is a good time to be shouting and telling the players they're terrible. Neither of those two things need to be done just yet. But I do think this is a time to say what is happening at Liverpool and these results are not good enough, especially considering the trajectory that this team was in before. Now, it's easy to put this down to FSG. It's easy to put this down to a lack of signings. This Liverpool squad is good enough to win things right now, or at least good enough to get into the top four and compete. We can debate in the comments whether Jordan Henderson is becoming too old, whether Milner is a good influence on the side when he is on the field, whether Bajcetic is too young, whether Thiago is too... I'm sure that we all have our own taste in football, but let's look at the squad and say there is a much better performance and a much better shape that can come out of this team than is currently being gotten. And that's down to the coaching, that's down to the fact that the team do not know what they're meant to be doing, and down to the fact that I think Liverpool's timelines after 2020 have not lined up. The people coming in at the very top level of the club have not lined up with the talent out on the field. And this has been a period where Liverpool have begun to plateau, but plateaued at a very high level. And when you plateau and the velocity begins to stop, it's not about going, well, we could just keep pushing on. The line doesn't keep going up forever in sport. The line can't keep going higher and higher and higher due to exhaustion, human elements of the mentality, the physical side of it. All those different elements can't keep going up and up and up. There has to be a point where that plateaus, and you either choose to continue that, you may dip for a while and then go back up. It may be that you dip and then go higher due to new signings and those kind of things, but the momentum has to be kept. Otherwise, the dip looks like this. Too many players were not moved on in the summer. There was a Naby Keita who did not want to be at Liverpool in this summer. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's contract ends very soon. You can tell that there are other players who have too big a role within the side right now and don't have the fitness or the over the season fitness in order to enact that, right? It's lovely that Jordan Henderson is still in this team. I love him as a captain. I love him as a Liverpool figure and a Liverpool history maker. He made history with Liverpool, but he should not be being relied upon in the way that he is right now. And it's clear that when Liverpool's backs are to the walls, Klopp goes for the guys that he thinks he can trust and his guys. And the problem is, I think at the moment there are two factions within the team. There are people who were happy before to be there for the journey and clearly were not the core 11 or the core 13 or 14. And now there are guys who, as the transition happens, are realizing that they're transitioning away from being the core of the team. And that it's not about then a rebellion. It's not about, oh, these guys don't want to be here anymore. Like I said, the devil is in the detail. The grey area here is what is tripping Liverpool up. You don't agree with me? Well, if you want to put a certainty on some things, if you want to find a video where people are going to tell you, it's Klopp, it's the players, it's the FSG need to sell. I'm sure all of those are contributing factors. And I think there's a lot of responsibility that needs to be taken in those areas. But I'm sick of boring, simplistic videos and simplistic articles which aren't looking into why Liverpool actually have declined. I'm not here to make excuses for Jurgen Klopp. I'm here to say that I think there are bigger problems, and the way to solve those problems is to look at them and not just go change FSG, change the manager, change the players. Klopp is right in his press conferences that just saying a transfer fixes X is not going to be the case. Do you know why? Because if Liverpool even signed Jude Bellingham, it does not fix the problems that Liverpool have had. It sure does put Liverpool on a trajectory that's back up again. It sure changes some of the mentality in the dressing room. It allows Liverpool to move some of those players on. But inherently, signing one player and keeping some of the same issues that Liverpool have as before is not going to help. So we can blame whoever it is that's responsible for transfers. And I think that that's partly why Julian Ward and Michael Edwards wanted to leave the club. The headlines right now is that those guys haven't been empowered to move on the players they need to or buy the players they need to because Jurgen Klopp wants a very specific profile of player, often to the point where it is one guy or a couple of people. Now, that may mean that Jurgen and a couple of his team around him are willing to wait, boom or bust, for a Jude Bellingham or whoever is the name. And I know there is movement going on behind the scenes. I know that there is interest in players and players are interested in signing for Liverpool. But in this period where Liverpool are in a dip, and it is a dip, I mean, at least I hope it's a dip, Liverpool still you can't just fall off a cliff and say multiple 3-0s away from home in one season is acceptable at any point. Previous seasons, you could just go, okay, well, Liverpool can just flick it on next week and see what happens. That's not happening here. And when they could just flick it on and off before, sure, I'm pretty sure Liverpool fans could remain positive about that. But that's not the case here anymore. But I will read you this list of injuries, which can also be a reason why Liverpool have been poor recently. One of many. Jota, Firmino, Diaz, Artemella, I don't even know I'm including him in the list. Virgil van Dijk, Ibrahim Konate. You could make a solid 6 or 7-a-side team out of just that Liverpool team. And then tell me that it is a good idea that Liverpool, or it is a good thing that Liverpool didn't have the substitute depth today. If you're bringing on a Roberto Firmino who can hook up that Liverpool front line, you're changing the face of what Liverpool can achieve in a game. If you bring on a Luis Diaz, you're bringing and changing the face of what Liverpool can do. If you're not needing to bring on Virgil van Dijk, but if Van Dijk's in that side, I have no doubt that Liverpool still lose it, but I think it's still poor. And I think it's poor that Liverpool do not have Virgil van Dijk or Ibrahim Konate in their side right now. There are too many hamstring injuries. There are too many positions in the top of Liverpool's coaching staff who at the moment don't have the requisite relationship to achieve Liverpool's maximum potential. And that's my point here. I was having loads of conversations during the game. My WhatsApp is going throughout the game, right? And I've got multiple different people, Liverpool fans, non-Liverpool fans, saying, giving me their input, whatever it is that they see, right? Some of these guys watch Liverpool week in, week out. Some of them watch other teams. But the point broadly was, hey, this isn't the time to discuss Jurgen Klopp sacking or moving on from Jurgen Klopp just yet. Just yet. It's clear that there is a vision, but that vision has changed at Liverpool in recent years. And I am reticent to say that I think the wheels have fallen off because I don't think they have just yet. I think there is a plan, which is why Liverpool are sticking so steadfast to this course. Why Jurgen Klopp and Pep Linders and the other players and whoever is on their camp are saying, stick with this because when X happens, then this is all good. There must be a belief that Liverpool have a roadmap here. But my concern then comes around if FSG are looking to sell, there is a point where the club needs to retain value. It can't just drop into the bottom 12. They're not going to get the value that they want in the market for the club then, so we're not going to see the level of investment. They may have missed that window to get that investment, right? On top of that, if you drop out of the Champions League, you do drop money, you drop revenue in there. But on top of that, again, you then struggle to attract more players to Liverpool. So unless those players believe they can come in and make a big change, there is another issue there. And then on top of that, I do think that Liverpool's edge and the unnecessary nature of what is happening here in terms of their lack of performance is harming them in terms of their long-term trajectory. It's hard to know what else to say at this point. There is an element of Liverpool fans are confused by what is happening because at one point the graph was going up. The graph goes where I want it to, David. But the graph was going up. Michael Edwards was in. They had a natural successor, but Michael Edwards was clearly leaving for not great reasons. And there were red flags, and there have been red flags a lot since, which make it harder for me to say, hey, I think this Liverpool side is worth investing in or is worth backing right now. I could see reasons why Liverpool would be backed. At this point, the system doesn't look like the players invest in it. And even then, I think the system, at the start of the season, you could see the system that Liverpool were going for. Now there is an adaptability and a changeability and a flexibility, which I can see Liverpool are trying to get, but is not serving Liverpool to their maximum potential. I'd be interested to know what you guys think, because I've laid out a number across the board there where Liverpool haven't employed best at the top level. They've relied way too much on Jurgen Klopp. They haven't made the mistakes that some people have pointed out they think they've made. Not signing people in the transfer market I think is one element of this. And maybe they've held on to people too long, not turned them over quick enough, or they haven't supplemented an older squad with younger players, or at least some of the young players they need. We can highlight all the youth that you want, but there is a problem right now with this Liverpool side. But I think there is a lack of belief, a lack of confidence in the system and in what is going on at the club, which is now harming what is going on the field. And, if Liverpool want this level of investment, they want to continue to be successful, they're going to need to dip into their pockets at some point. It's not just going to be we're waiting for investment, we're waiting for investment, we're waiting for it. It can't just be that. But it is reminiscent of what happened at the Red Sox. It's reminiscent of what FSG have managed before at other teams. Boom. And then mid-level mediocrity, where there's confusion about how the top level works. Players that they want aren't coming, players that they want to keep aren't staying, and players that they should be keeping are able to walk out the door because they're not offered the right contracts. That remind you of anyone? People will be saying, I warned you about this at Liverpool. They didn't warn you about this. What is unfolding at Liverpool now is recoverable. But the right things have to be done at the very top level in order to get a game plan in place for the rest of the season. Because at the moment, with these kind of performances, Liverpool just won't even finish anywhere near Europe. And then on top of that, there has to be a long-term vision. I'm not saying I don't think there is one. I very much believe there is. I think there are some fantastic players at Liverpool. The youth, even some of the players that people are writing off is ridiculous. Jordan Henderson is a great leader within this Liverpool side. Doesn't mean he has to play a full 90 every week, but it's worth having people like that in training. It's worth having people like that on your bench. It's worth having leaders within the dressing room. People who can bring in new eras, coach other people, show them the standards that Liverpool expect. But right now, I don't think that those leaders are happy with what they're being asked to do out in the field. Cody Gakpo is whilst he is showing signs, he should have hit the ground running way quicker. And that's not his responsibility. There are people who are responsible for his lack of performance right now, and I don't think it's him. So I'm sure we can find people to blame, fingers to point. What I'm saying is I think it's a cumulative problem that Liverpool have right now. Let me know what you think is part of that cumulative problem in the comments below, and I'll chat to you guys later in the week. Much love.